Hello, welcome to the channel 12 Step Guide with Troy, or welcome back. Today we're going to cover more education on Step 2. Previously, we covered Step 2 out of the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book, 1939. Today we're going to cover 1953, 12, and 12, whereas the second half of Step 2, we're going to put those together for you so you have a better understanding of Step 2 in the belief that then you can take Step 2. Now, what we learned previously, Bill Wilson was at the table with MBT drunk when he took Step 1 and 2. I believe Step 1 and 2 are intended to be taken together. Why would I say that? Well, if you admit you're powerless and that's it, and you're weak and that's all you have, is it better to be able to say, but I also have these strengths. So with this, I'm stronger. I'm only weak alone, but with these other tools, I'm stronger. And we're going to take a look at AA between 1935 and 1939, when the 12 steps didn't exist. They were operating under three separate the different groups. One was looking at the four absolutes from the Oxford groups, and then there were two sets of six-step programs. And we're going to take a look at those today before we get into the step book, because I believe this is going to add color to your understanding. And I'm going to pull that stuff out of the book I wrote. This was actually revised in 2001. It's no longer in print. Two things happened in 2001. I released this book. And then 9/11, 2001 happened when they flew the planes in America into the Twin Towers. Well, 3 months later, I went on burnout, and here I am 23 years later, well rested. So I'm going to get better at this. Uh, I've not done this format ever, speaking into teaching in this way. My education, all my teaching was groups. I've done thousands of groups in various capacities, but I'm going to get better at this. You stick with me. I'm going to teach you the steps. You're going to understand them. I guarantee you that. I'm waltzing you around. I've seen a lot of that. Okay. We are going to learn the steps. You give me a chance, and we're going to build this together. Now, what, last year that this clown got under my feet and woke me up, and I didn't think I was ever going to be teaching this stuff again or getting involved. And once you're properly educated, maybe you'll be interested in doing a case study with me with this guy, because I think we got a long way to go to treating addiction and educating the masses. And I think we could do a lot better. AA, as far as Joe and Charlie said, AA used to function at like 75%, and now it's at a very low percent as far as actual quality recovery goes. So what changed? Uh, I point to Joe and Charlie for that information. I'm citing them. It'd be difficult to. I don't have any stats on that personally, but I do understand my own experience in Alcoholics Anonymous and why and what changed. And that's what we're going over. So you can think for yourself, because it's your recovery, right? At the end of the day, you're the one that's either going to feel good or not and succeed. All right. So I'm going to, out of this book, it's page 67. So here's a quick glimpse of what I'm reading from anyway, just so you can in case you want to like read it yourself. Hopefully you can see that. But we're just going to pull some basic information out of this. So some of the groups were doing the four absolutes, and these are the steps translated into the 12 steps. What were they doing? When do you take step two? That's some of the question, right? When did Bill take it? So we answered that. Bill was drunk at the table. So you can take it pretty early on. You can take it with step one. Another question, what's the reading the step reading all about in the step book, and we're going to get into that. Um, so let's get started here. So the four absolute. First one, absolute honesty. Now I didn't study the Oxford groups, but I am interpreting it from Bill's story, and there's definitely some correlations there that translate into the 12 steps. There was more information than clearly than just these four words, the four absolute being the first one. But so let's look at the 6 step programs. One of them, we admitted that we were licked, that we were powerless over alcohol. Okay, that's a 6 step. And what was 2? The second step, we made a moral inventory of our defects or sins. Now, they jump right over step 2 and 3. They go right into from step 1 to 4 in the AA. First, step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So they're going from admitting they were licked, which is the same thing as we're powerless unless you're applying some anal effect, and we're not going to do that here. And then we made a moral inventory. Well, that's step 4, the inventory of our defects and sins. But there was a second 6 step program, complete deflation. Step 2 was dependence and guidance from a higher power. Now that's close to the 12 steps. And then 3 was moral inventory. So hopefully that gives you a little color as to what they were doing. Previously, I used an analogy, digging a hole. Okay, we're going to build on that. It's just an off-center analogy to understand the transition from step 1 to 2. I'm going to use a couple of different analogies. One is we'll start with this one. So you feel digging a hole is the answer. Okay, so you're using your hands to dig the hole. That's self-will. And the rains come, the storms come, and fills in with mud. That's the relapse. So at some point you say, enough's enough of this. I'm going to get a shovel. Well, there's step 2, believing. Okay, you didn't go get the shovel yet. You believe that the shovel's going to help you, right? There's step 2. All right, so what's it look like, say, an active addiction? Well, I'm going to go drink and I'm going to feel better. But mine says, uh, have a drink and you'll feel better. The body backs it up with a craving, right? So you go ahead and you have a drink, and so step 2, the higher power, because now what do you got? You got God in a can, don't you? Right? You got God in a can. You believe God in a can, God in a bag. You're going to snort that up. You're going to shoot that up. You're going to smoke that up. God's walking through the front door. It's going to be better this time. God in a food bag, and another thing. At this point, the alcoholic and a cutter, they're no different. The cutter believes that they will feel better if they cut the outside of their arm to relieve pain inside. The alcoholic feels like they're going to feel better if they introduce God in a can to help them feel better. Both being some sort of an outside activity that affects the inside. Anyway, back to the hole. So when your self will says, "Well, I got to dig the hole faster," you're using your hands, right? And then the hole fills in. That's the self will. So, and then the shovel, the higher power, external tools. So I hope you found that helpful. All right, so we're going to start getting into another area I'd like to cover also about the higher power. Bill, before Alcoholics Anonymous or the Oxford groups, every time he went to a treatment, it wasn't a treatment center or a hospital. There wasn't treatment centers. He just detoxed. There was no hope. Had no answers. What do we have today? Okay. Alcoholics Anonymous, all the 12 step programs, treatment centers, but we got a lot more than that, right? And this is important information. We have counselors, group group treatment, we have doctors, we have hospitals, medications that might be able to help with the cravings, whether it's a tobacco craving or opiate craving, mental health issues to balance out maybe certain chemicals that a psychiatrist. And it's important. Now you don't go to AA and ask, well, should I take these medications? You get professional assessments on that sort of thing. But we have a whole lot of assistance, a whole lot of people that can help. Each one of these can be viewed as a higher power when combating addiction, addictive behavior, or emotional suffering. And I'm going to get into that. I'm going to back that up. Okay, all right. That's not just my opinion, but so let's get started in the 12 and 12. Now this is step two. This is putting it together from the big book. I'm not going to read this verbatim. There's too much information. This is a great reading that you'd read in the 12 step meeting, and then you would contemplate the various information in here, find yourself, hear others, and try to advance your understanding of step two. So the first paragraph. This is page 25 of the 12 and 12 Alcoholics Anonymous 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, released 1953. So the first part it gets into is the newcomers bitching. You've had to, make us admit we're powerless, and now we need some other power. And so Bill says, some of us won't believe in God, others can't, and still others who do believe that God exists have no faith that He'll perform these miracles. So Bill's going to get into 5 different types of belief systems. He's going to start with the non-believer, and I'm not going to get into that. You understand if you don't believe in God, the atheist. So it does cover a little bit the concept that maybe how he does cherish the thought that man risen so majestically from a single cell in the primordial ooze. That's like the universe, somehow life come up out of thin air and eventually transformed into what we are now, is the spearhead of evolution and therefore the only God that his universe knows. So that's that. So now we're going to get into how the sponsor might handle this type of situation. They're non-believer and saying, a higher power, and so here's some answers. His sponsor probably says, "Take it easy. The hoop you have to jump through is a lot wider than you think. At least I found it so. So did a friend of mine who was at one time vice president of the American Atheist Society, but he got through with room to spare." So he goes on further down below. Alcoholics Anonymous does not demand that you believe anything. All of its 12 steps are but suggestions. Second, to get sober and to stay sober, you don't have to swallow all of step 2 right now. That's important information. Maybe you can take a piece of step 2 and move on and deepen and broaden it in the higher steps. You can always come back to it. Looking back, now this isn't Bill speaking, but Bill endorsed this. This is another writer that was in the book. Looking back, I find that I took it piecemeal myself. Third, all you really need is a truly open mind. Just resign from the debating society and quit bothering yourself, such as deep questions as whether it was the hen or the egg that came first. Again, all you need is an open mind. So then it suggests that you take a look at AA. Then I woke up. I had to admit that AA showed results. So that's important. AA clearly has shown tremendous results. So, in jumping down a little further, the sponsor, he can't say upon what occasion or upon what day he came to believe in a power greater than himself, but he certainly have that belief now. To acquire it, I had only to stop fighting and practice the rest of AA's program as enthusiastically as I could. Do the best you can with step two and move on. Trust the higher steps. We're going to get into that. I trust the higher steps. Don't hang up on step two. Now, if you don't care for the one I've suggested, you'll be sure to discover one that suits if only you look and listen. This is about a higher power. Many a man like you has begun to solve the problem by the method of substitution. In this important information, you can, if you wish, make AA itself your higher power. I've said that before, but here it is, backing it up right in the book. Here's a very large group of people who have solved their alcohol problem. If this respect, in this respect, they are certainly a power greater than you, who have not even come close to a solution. Surely you can have faith in them. Even this minimum of faith will be enough. You will find many members who have crossed the threshold just this way. All of them will tell you that once across, their faith broadened. So you start getting into the steps, your faith, whatever the faith is built on, gets stronger and deeper. Your faith is deepened. Relieved of the alcohol obsession, their lives unaccountably transformed. They came to believe in a higher power, and most of them began to talk of God. So now we're going to visit the second type. So there was the non-believer and some ideas that you can embrace or not. Consider next the plight of those who once had faith but had lost it. There will be those who have drifted into indifference, don't care either way. Those filled with self-sufficiency, too much reliance on self, who have cut themselves off. Those who have become prejudiced against religion, they don't like religion. And those who are downright defiant because God has failed to fulfill their demands. Can a experience tell all these they may still find a faith that works? So sometimes AA comes harder to those who have lost or rejected faith than to those who never had any faith at all. Some people are quite angry at God for various reasons. So moving down. So some descriptions. Religion says the existence of God can be proved. The agnostic says it can't be proved, and the atheist claims proof of the non-existence of God. So just some couple of definitions. So let's get into another. We understand that I'm just covering the basics of the different types of belief systems. Now we come to another kind of problem, the intellectual self-sufficient man or woman. To these, many AAs can say, yes, we were like you, far too smart for our own good. We loved to have people call us precocious. We used our education to blow up ourselves into prideful balloons, though we were careful to hide this from others. Secretly, we felt we could float above the rest of the folks on our brain power alone. Scientific progress told us there was nothing man couldn't do. Now, back then, there wasn't a cell phone and all these computer stuff we have today. Knowledge was all powerful. Intellect could conquer nature. Since we were brighter than most folks, so we thought, the spoils of victor would be ours for the thinking. The God of intellect displaced the God of our fathers. But again, John Barleycorn, that's a song, turn it into liquor there. And then I covered it on a previous episode. And then the eventual death. We who had won so handsomely in a walk turned into all-time losers. We saw that we had to reconsider or die. We found many in AA who once thought as we did. They helped us to get down to our right size, getting by their example. They showed us that humility and intellect could be compatible, provided we placed humility first. When we began to do that, we received the gift of faith which works. This faith is for you too. Now, humility in this context, a realistic outlook of who and what we really are, followed by an honest, sincere attempt to become what we could be. So you had to make some adjustments in yourself to be a stronger individual. So here's number 4. Another crowd of AA says, we were plumb disgusted with religion and all its works. They felt the Bible was full of nonsense. We could cite a chapter and verse. We couldn't see the Beatitudes for the begats. That's the blessings for the children or the offspring. In spots, its morality was impossibly good. In others, it seemed impossibly bad. But it was the morality of the religious themselves that really got us down. We gloated over the hypocrisy, bigotry, and crushing self-righteousness that clung to so many believers, even in their Sunday best. How we loved to shout the damaging fact that millions of the good men of religion were still killing one another off in the name of God. This all meant, of course, that we had substituted negative for positive thinking. A little quick thing. I've observed along the way that there was some religious people that misbehaved. I also observed that all of them seemed to have both eyes. None of them found it necessary to pluck one of their eyes out after this misbehaving. And so my message is, if someone's suggesting to you to hurt yourself or hurt someone else, let's go easy on that kind of thing. Get some more opinions, right? We didn't get sober to be hurting ourselves or hurting others. That's the hope. So we're going to move on. As psychiatrists have often observed, defiance is the outstanding characteristic of many alcoholic defiance. So it's not strange that lots of us have had our day at defying God himself. Sometimes it's because God has not delivered us the good things of life which we specified. Now, this is going to start getting into, you don't have to be an alcoholic to have had some of these issues here. And you can have been affected by the alcoholic. We specified as greedy children makes an impossible list for Santa Claus. More often, though, we had met up with some major calamity and to our way of thinking lost out because God deserted us. The girl we wanted to marry had other notions. We prayed God that she'd change her mind, but she didn't. We prayed for healthy children and were presented with sick ones, or none at all. We'd prayed for promotions at business, and none came. Loved ones upon whom we heartily depended were taken from us by so-called acts of God. Then we became drunkards and asked God to stop that, but nothing happened. This was the unkindest cut of all. Damn this faith business, we said. Didn't matter 1939 or now. You can appreciate these examples. They all apply. When we encountered AA, the fallacy, the falseness of our defiance was revealed. At no time had we asked what God's will was for us. Instead, we had been telling him what it ought to be. So let's take a look at the last one. Now let's take the guy full of faith, but still reeking of alcohol. Some quick ideas. He's sure he still believes in God, but suspects that God doesn't believe in him. In moving on a little bit with that, the answer has to do with the quality of faith rather than its quantity. The fact was, we really hadn't cleaned house so that the grace of God could enter us and expel the obsession. Now Bill's getting into step 4 here. He wants you to do step 4. This is right in step 2. He's getting into step 4. In no such deep or meaningful sense had we ever taken stock of ourselves, made amends to those we had harmed, or freely given to any other human being without any demand for reward. Few indeed are the practicing alcoholic who have any idea how irrational they are. I'm skipping forward more. Or seeing their irrationality can bear to face it. Some will be willing to turn themselves problem drinkers, but cannot endure the suggestion that they are in fact mentally ill. So Bill thinks there's some mental illness here. Now, you address your drinking issue, get your thinking right, that mental illness goes away. It's self-induced, and it can be dealt with. They are abated in this blindness. They are enabled in this blindness by a world which does not understand the difference between sane drinking and alcoholism. Now, 90 years later, here we are. I think we got a better understanding, but there's plenty of enabling going on out there. The definition of sanity is defined as soundness of mind. Yet no alcoholic, soberly analyzing his destructive behavior, whether the destruction fell on the dining room furniture or his own moral fiber, can claim soundness of mind for himself. Therefore, step 2, this is the final little paragraph here. Step 2 is a rallying point for all of us, whether agnostic, atheist, or former believer. We can stand together on this step. True humility and an open mind can lead us to faith. In every AA meeting is in an assurance that God will restore us to sanity if we rightly relate ourselves to Him. Whatever your belief system, true humility and an open mind, a realistic outlook of who and what you really are. Each person is different. Your abilities are different. Your life's different. But addressing the problem, we all can have an issue. No matter what program we're in, we identify the issue, have an open mind, let people help us become willing to believe that a group can help us. Some can believe in far greater tools, God, certainly others, the church, counseling, medical professionals. There's a whole host of avenues. Each one may not be right for everyone, but there is an avenue for each person. And we come back to the meetings for that support and to process off of each other. So I encourage you, take step 2 and move on. You can always deepen and broaden. The higher steps are going to help you to work through, to clear out some of that noise so you can better understand what makes you tick, why you haven't been looking out for your best interests and maybe the interests of the people around you. Something is driving you down a road that you often don't want to get down. That higher power, and it can. Let's pursue some positive higher powers instead of the negative higher power. Well, I hope you find this helpful. From here, we're going to begin step 3 in the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. Same format. We'll do it in 2 segments. And have a nice day. Thank you for listening.
If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Ring the bell to be notified when new content is added. Also, you can support the channel 12-Step Guide with Troyo by donating through PayPal to hsworldservice@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening. In AA, we often hear one day at a time. At the boyhood home of Bill W. in East Dorset, Vermont, on a mantle is a framed message with more information. It says, "The best thing about the future is that it comes one day at a time," signed Abraham Lincoln.